Today at 6, an easy win for England in their first World Cup match, but there's political controversy on and off the pitch.
And Saka keeps on going himself.
As the goals mounted up, England swept to a 6-2 victory against an outclassed Iran, prompting huge celebrations both here and in Qatar.
I can't describe the feeling, you know, it's amazing. I'm so happy, I'm so proud, and yeah, we got the win as well, so it's just a really, really special day.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. England's World Cup campaign has begun with a convincing 6-2 victory over Iran, their highest ever score in an opening World Cup match. But the tournament's been surrounded by controversy and politics was felt on the pitch before the game even began. Iran's players refused to sing their country's national anthem in defiance of the regime and their treatment of protesters. And England captain Harry Kane didn't wear the One Love armband in support of LGBT rights after players from all teams were warned by FIFA they could be booked for breaching kit regulations. Natalie Perks reports from Doha.
Come on, England!
Come on, England!
FIFA had told teams to ignore politics and focus on football. The backdrop to England's opening match made that impossible.
Iran!
Opponents Iran are enduring deadly protests about women's rights back home.
Woman life freedom.
And a row over a simple act of wearing their own anti-discrimination armband bubbled right until kick-off.
The only way things get better is if you talk about them, and I think FIFA should have realised that.
You should be able to express what you believe, but again, I suppose FIFA's trying to bring it back to football.
We know that the England team are behind the One Love campaign, so that's good enough.
Some fans couldn't even get in after FIFA's e-ticket system crashed. It built up.
Thousands of England fans have made the journey out to Qatar for the World Cup, but millions up and down the country will be watching the action at home, at work, and in specially built fan zones like the one in Manchester, from where our correspondent Dan Johnson sent this report.
This is a fan park, Manchester style. A warehouse.
Oh, let's go!
Jumping to a steady beat of England goals. This city wears national pride alongside respect for equality. The sort of issue under question in Qatar.
I must admit, it was a bit of a slow build-up for me. I didn't know what to expect. But coming here today and winning 3-0 now has really pumped me up.
You're feeling it now?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm really feeling it.
Support England 100%, so I'm here, but yeah, it's soured it a lot. And the fact that it's winter, it doesn't feel right anyway.
FIFA aren't as inclusive as they make out to be, and
I think they should be wearing the armband.
I do think they should be wearing the armbands, yeah, definitely.
Qatar certainly wouldn't approve of this. It wasn't full here today, but the hope is now football takes centre stage and interest grows.
6 England goals, that's really built the atmosphere here. So after the initial lack of enthusiasm for this World Cup, it could now be that a different tone takes over this tournament.
I think you just got to get involved now and get on with it. We're in it to win it, so yeah, let's go on board with our country and see if we can go all the way with it.
Next up is the United States on Friday night. Dan Johnson, BBC News, Manchester.
The Iranian team chose not to sing their country's national anthem before the match in an apparent show of support for protesters back home. There have been weeks of violent clashes across Iran, which erupted after a woman died in police custody. She'd been detained for allegedly not wearing her headscarf properly. Our correspondent Shaima Khalil reports from Doha.
Even before the match, emotions were high, many with a clear message about why they were here.
I'm not cheering for Islamic Republic. I'm not cheering for them because they're representing Islamic Republic. I'm here to support my country, my homeland, Iran.
At the moment, the regime, they are killing kids, they are killing children.
I'm not coming over here to support them. We are just coming over here to be voice of people of in Iran. You know, since these protests started, more than 400 people have been killed.
On the pitch, the football was disappointing for Iran's side. But the political turmoil could be felt throughout. In the sea of Iranian flags, there were gestures of defiance.
While most Iranian fans cheered relentlessly for their team, some others could be heard chanting "Be shut off," which means dishonorable, a word used to criticize the security forces. A woman was in the stands with a small poster saying "Women, Life, Freedom," in solidarity with those protesting back in her home country. For many here, this was more than just a football game.
Anti-government protests are still ongoing, and the violent crackdown continues. Human rights activists say 400 people were killed and thousands arrested since the protests started in September. The reverberations of this movement have been felt across the globe, and now they've echoed here on one of the world's biggest of stages. Shaima Khalil, BBC News, Doha.
Well, let's talk to our sports editor, Dan Roan, who's also in Doha. Dan, the World Cup is supposed to be the ultimate celebration of football, but it's been slightly overshadowed by the politics of the last 2 days.
Yeah. That's right, Fiona, yes. I mean, FIFA have always tried to keep politics and activism out of the sport and keep money very much in. But as Iran proved today during that national anthem, there is a limit to what they can do, especially here at this World Cup. FIFA's rhetoric has been toughening, over recent weeks. And today they played the trump card, the threat of sporting sanctions. No doubt it will have been welcomed here by the hosts. But I think certainly among human rights groups, back in Europe especially, it has been condemned. I think also some will be somewhat disappointed with the way that the FA and the other associations capitulated, rather than what would have been a very powerful statement by Harry Kane and the other captains. On the pitch, well, it was a perfect start, quite frankly, for Gareth Southgate's side. Despite success in major tournaments, they've struggled for form in recent months. No sign of that today. Two things really impressive about England. One, the emergence of players like Bellingham and Saka, who have just given this team an added dimension. And secondly, the strength in depth, the quality of the substitutes that Southgate can now bring on is very impressive, and they will now have full confidence they can go far after what is their best ever start to a World Cup campaign. So England may have held back from the gesture that they wanted to make with the armband, but on the pitch in terms of the performance, they made a statement of intent.
Dan Roan in Doha, thank you. In less than an hour, Wales fans will get to see their side in action against the USA. For Welsh supporters, it's been a 64-year wait to qualify for the World Cup, and the excitement is mounting in Doha, from where our Wales correspondent Howell Griffith sent this report.
When you've waited a lifetime to see your team at a World Cup, just another few hours are easy to enjoy. Coming to Qatar has involved huge expense, ethical dilemmas, and an emotional overload.
Welsh football's been in my heart since I was 7 years old, so a mixture of excitement, nerves, and most of all pride.
We had to come for this one. As Gareth says, you can die happy now.
We've booked up for 3 weeks from work, so let's hope we're all the way to the final.
So, a nation expects, well, this generation of players, led by Gareth Bale, has helped foster something Wales have missed for so many decades. A self-belief that stretches beyond the stadium, beyond sport.
It's just one of those moments that is a massive piece of history in our country, something that we've all wanted for a long time. And like I said, to be the team that was to get over the line and do that for our country is incredible.
Coach, put me in, I'm ready to play.
Wales's opponents aren't a footballing superpower, but the US are ranked higher by FIFA and arrive with their own point to prove.
It's a very young team, high energy, a bit of a swagger, which is somewhat surprising considering that all but one of them have not played in a World Cup before, but they play at big clubs.
A red wall of 3,000 fans is ready to help Wales resist, as everything builds towards the biggest moment in Welsh football for over half a century.
So here we are inside the stadium, the red wall ready for that moment in history. It is a moment, however, where some feel conflicted. Gareth Bale, like the other European captains, won't be wearing that One Love armband in support of diversity because of the risk of the yellow card. And we're aware this evening some Welsh female fans have had a rainbow bucket hat confiscated by security guards because they were told they would not be allowed to wear that symbol within this stadium. FIFA told the world that everyone would be welcome to that stage, increasingly that comment has been questioned.
Hal in Doha, thanks very much. Well, no doubt much of Wales will come to a standstill tonight once the game gets underway. Our Wales correspondent Thomas Morgan is in Cardiff tonight. And what's the atmosphere there like?
It's absolutely deafening here in Cardiff tonight. A capacity crowd here in the Depot venue in the centre of the capital city centre. 1,500 here, waiting to see Wales. We've been waiting for 64 years for Wales to make it to a World Cup once again. And as Howell just said there in his piece, Wales are being led by Gareth Bale, a man, the most decorated, currently serving British player, currently playing across the British Isles. And I think what the people here want is there's expectation, there's hope, because after qualifying for Euro 2016, getting to the semi-finals, then reaching Euros last year, and now making it to the World Cup, the fans here are in good spirits. But in the US, they've got a tough opponent. We've never beaten them before. We drew to them 2 years ago. But as I say, spirits are high, and why not? Because these opportunities don't come around very often.
We could just about hear you, Thomas. We certainly sense excitement. Thanks very much. And for insights on the big issues at the World Cup, you can listen to the Newscast podcast with Adam Fleming and the BBC's political editor Chris Mason. They'll be talking about the armbands row, which we've been talking about on the programme, allegations of fake fans, and kicking off the Newscast sweepstake. You don't want to miss that. Search for Newscast on BBC Sounds. And the time has just gone 6:15. Our top story this evening.
Saka keeps on going himself. Oh!
An easy win for England in their first World Cup match, but there's political controversy on and off the pitch. Still to come, NHS leaders in Scotland discuss the idea of wealthier patients paying for treatment as the health service battles huge backlogs.
And later at 6:30, why these school children are finding their own unique way to highlight the cost of living crisis. We'll explain. Plus, the Elizabeth line is 6 months old today. We assess its impact.
An earthquake has struck the main Indonesian island of Java, leaving at least 162 people dead and hundreds injured, according to the local governor. Buildings have been reduced to rubble and rescuers are frantically trying to find survivors. The epicentre of the 5.6 magnitude quake was close to Cianjur town in West Java. It's an area which is densely populated and prone to landslides. Our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head reports.
As the shaking subsided, shocked residents stood out on the streets of Cianjur to take in the damage done to their homes. It was extensive. By normal measurements, this was not an especially powerful earthquake, but it was shallow, close to the Earth's surface, enough to cause hundreds of buildings to collapse. They brought the injured to the main hospital in the area in any way they could. Some carried on floor mats, others in the backs of trucks. This child in the arms of a soldier, and in a constant, chaotic stream of ambulances. With aftershocks still being felt, they were left on tarpaulins put down outside the hospital, with nurses treating them as best they could where they lay. All our staff have come, said this hospital spokeswoman. People off shift, those on days off, all of them. Officials have been trying to coordinate rescue efforts for places which have been cut off. We still have one area that's not been evacuated, said the district chief. The road is completely blocked by a landslide. Earthquakes are not unusual here, along Indonesia's so-called Ring of Fire. But this one appears to have been more destructive than most. So many lives lost, so many homes to rebuild. Jonathan Head, BBC News, Bangkok.
Our correspondent Vaidya Baraputri is at the site of the earthquake for us now. Vaidya, what more can you tell us?
So right now I'm at a regional hospital in Cianjur district, West Java province. People who are injured after the earthquake are taken here, and the hospital is absolutely overflowed. You can see behind me there are row of tents outside of the hospital building, and there are emergency tents like this on each side of the hospital wings. People are being taken care here with very minimal lighting. However, I can see that medical and rescue workers here are working around the clock, treating people on the spot, people with head injuries, broken bones, and they're on IVs. Hundreds of people here, children, adults, old people are being taken care at this hospital right now. The situation is very harrowing. I can hear a baby crying behind me, and ambulances are coming and going to pick up and deliver people. However, many people are still trapped because the earthquake triggered a landslide and isolated villages.
Valdia Baraputri-Nciancio, thank you very much. Here, the Prime Minister has quashed speculation that he wants to renegotiate the Brexit deal to forge closer trade ties with the EU. Some Tory MPs reacted with anger to reports of briefings from Downing Street that the government wants to reopen the deal. Today, Rishi Sunak denied that and rejected calls from the UK's biggest business group to allow more immigration to fill vacant jobs and boost productivity. Our business editor, Simon Jack, has more.
This 200-year-old family business in Dudley makes roof tiles using 9 energy-hungry kilns. Add that to rising wages and customers feeling the same pressure, and the outlook is tough.
I think when we project forward, we are very worried. The environment that we are selling into is going to become more challenging. If we've got to put our prices up to reflect all the cost pressures that we're facing, there comes a point where people just can't afford to buy your products.
30 miles away, the Prime Minister told business he'd stabilise the economy and was optimistic about the future.
Our most pressing task when it comes to growth is stability and controlling inflation. But that will never be the limit of our ambition. The more we innovate, the more we will grow.
But business leaders are increasingly talking of a need to review post-Brexit immigration and trade policy. But today, the Prime Minister squashed any notion of a rethink.
Under my leadership, the United Kingdom will not pursue any relationship with Europe that relies on alignment with EU laws. Now, I voted for Brexit, I believe in Brexit, and I know that Brexit can deliver, and is already delivering, enormous benefits and opportunities for the country.
You can't move around here without seeing or hearing the word growth. And the Prime Minister came today to talk about innovation, driving the growth in the jobs and the industries of the future. But for most people here, they have much more pressing concerns. High energy bills, of course, there's a chronic labour shortage and a big dip in trade with the EU. And it's that short-term growth that many feel isn't getting enough attention.
The question is, how on earth do we grow? And that's why you're starting to see people explore things like immigration or regulation or planning reform or even our relationship with Europe, because we need other ways to get growing when we can't just rely on tax cuts and low interest rates.
Bosses also said big decisions would hinge on how much help they got with energy bills when current support expires in April.
How much recruitment we can do, how much longer term investment we can do, our profitability targets. Everything for our business is really key around the energy costs.
On that, the Prime Minister said wait and see. In all, there are still more questions than answers for businesses already under strain and nervous about the future. Simon Jack, BBC News, Birmingham.
Lawyers for a woman who left the UK as a teenager to join the Islamic State group have told a court that she was a victim of human trafficking for sexual exploitation. Shamima Begum went to Syria in 2015 when she was 15 years old and had her UK citizenship removed 4 years later. A 5-day hearing is considering a challenge to try to get it reinstated. The Home Office is insisting she continues to pose a threat to national security. Well, our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford's here with me. Daniel, you were in court today. What can you tell us about what was said?
Yeah, this is one of Britain's highest security courts, and in a basement courtroom with an MI5 witness giving evidence from behind a thick blue curtain, Shamima Begum's lawyers argued that rather than being considered a threat to national security, she should have been considered as a child victim of trafficking for sexual exploitation, because although she left the UK with 2 school friends and travelled on her own to Turkey. She was then smuggled across the border into Syria, and within days of arriving in Syria, aged 15, she was married to an adult Islamic State group fighter and was pregnant very soon afterwards. Her lawyers argue that the then Home Secretary Sajid Javid was far too quick to take away her British citizenship when she re-emerged from the Islamic State territory in 2019. He should have thought about her as a victim of exploitation and trafficking. But the Home Office say, no, this isn't a case about trafficking. This is a case about national security. It's about protecting people from in Britain from those people who are returning from the Islamic State group. And the MI5 officer, when pressed about this, said, well, victims can also be a threat as well.
Yeah, Dan Sanford, thank you. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has insisted that the founding principles of the NHS are not up for debate, after it emerged that senior officials had considered radical changes to the service. Draft minutes from a meeting of NHS Scotland leaders in September show they discussed the creation of a two-tier system where wealthier patients could pay for treatment. Our Scotland editor James Cook reports.
The National Health Service is struggling in Scotland and across the UK. And now we have a glimpse into top-level discussions about how to respond, with senior NHS leaders apparently given the green light to consider reform. The most controversial idea noted in the minutes is designing a two-tier system, where those who can afford to go private. Other suggestions include cutting back on state-funded prescriptions and sending patients home from hospital earlier, even if that means they're at greater risk. But the First Minister says any talk of privatising the NHS is nonsense.
I will be absolutely crystal clear as the democratically elected First Minister of the country that the founding principles of our National Health Service, that it is a universal service, free at the point of use, publicly funded, publicly delivered for all. These principles are not up for debate.
But do NHS bosses here have confidence in ministers, and especially in the Health Secretary Humza Yousaf visiting this hospital in Fife today? The minutes of the meeting also highlight concern that some Scottish Government suggestions are divorced from reality because of an absence of clinical input. And they talk about a disconnect between the pressure felt by clinicians on the one hand and the message from ministers on the other. And this health expert says it's not just the NHS in Scotland which is struggling.
All across the UK, I think the NHS is under really visible strain at the moment. You know, difficulties in accessing care, difficulties with finance, difficulty in attracting staff and giving them good enough terms and conditions that they stay. I think these conversations were in Scotland, I don't know the details, but people are thinking more about radical options.
And no wonder, because the summary of the discussions of NHS leaders concludes the fundamental model of healthcare is not working for us. James Cook, BBC News, Glasgow.
Every year, 200,000 babies around the world are born with clubfoot, which means they have twisted feet. Treatment in early childhood can be highly successful, but without it, a child faces a lifetime of pain and difficulty walking. In Senegal, only 20% of cases get treated. But experts there have perfected a technique that's transforming the lives of older children too, as our global health correspondent Naomi Grimley reports.
At 14, Sarinya relies on his mother to take him to clinic. But she'll do whatever it takes for a son who was born with both feet twisted inwards. He has club foot, a congenital condition affecting 1 in 800. This is how he used to walk. He's always dreamed of being a footballer.
Some people said he wouldn't walk, that he was incurable. In school, kids teased him about his feet. One time, he refused to go to class for 3 days. It caused me real heartache.
Senegalese medics are among those leading the way in treating older children using this so-called Ponseti method. Before, a child who'd already learnt to walk on a twisted foot might have been told surgery was the only option, whereas this is mostly non-invasive. In another clinic outside the capital, they're identifying cases as early as possible. It was the original idea of this treatment, which helps to manoeuvre the feet to face forwards. The medical team rely on word of mouth to get parents to bring their babies in.
So this child is only 13 days old. This is her second cast. So this means she's received treatment from the start of her life. It makes healing easier, and the feet are very flexible when they're young.
The thing about clubfoot treatment is it's super cheap and actually very easy. It doesn't even need highly trained doctors. Physiotherapists can do it too.
A week later, Sarinya is back at the clinic to have the 20th pair of casts taken off. A minor operation was also required to release the Achilles tendon. Now each foot is in position. He'll need physiotherapy to learn to walk again. But look at the progress on his feet. That dream of playing football is coming within reach. Naomi Grimley, BBC News, Dakar.
And good luck to him. Time for a look at the weather. Chris Fawkes is here. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Fiona. We've had more rain again today, and we've had one or two issues building up on some of the A roads across the south, with some localised flooding building in as well. Now, I've been looking at some of the rainfall stats so far this month, and it has been very wet across eastern areas of the UK. Aboyne in Aberdeenshire, more than twice the amount of rainfall compared with the November average, and not far behind that in Shoreham-on-Sea, which is in Sussex. Now, the reason I think we're seeing some very large rainfall totals in the east is down to this big ridge of high pressure stretching across from Northern Europe, Scandinavia to Greenland. It's effectively stopping our areas of low pressure from moving through. And looking at the Atlantic, you can see we do have further low pressures set to move in. And these will follow the same sort of pattern, where they move into the UK, become very slow moving and bring us quite a lot of rain. Now, overnight tonight, today's area of low pressure will slowly ease to a degree. Outbreaks of rain becoming lighter and a bit patchier, probably a bit misty and foggy up over the tops of the Pennines overnight. Cold in Scotland with some patches of frost. Tomorrow we'll still have the remains of the same area of low pressure that brought the rain today. Most of the rain will be across eastern areas. A few showers coming into the southwest, where it will continue to be quite windy. And we'll also have showers across northern areas of Scotland. Temperatures, well, around about 8 to 10 degrees for many of us, but probably not feeling quite as chilly as it did today, on account that the winds won't be quite as strong. That's a brief let-up, though, in the windy weather, because Wednesday sees another batch of rain. The winds strengthen behind this feature, and we'll see showers packing into the west. Again, some of those could be quite heavy with some thunder mixed in. At least the skies will brighten up for a time. Temperatures, similar really, around about 7 to maybe 10, maybe some 12s for the south of both England and Wales. Now, I don't really see a change in the overall weather pattern taking place for quite a while yet. It is going to be unsettled with further pulses of rain, staying quite windy. There's a tendency for it to turn a little bit milder, though, as we head into the weekend and the early part of next week as well, but certainly staying pretty wet. That's the latest, Fiona.
Chris, thanks very much. And that is the BBC News at 6 on the 21st of November. You can keep up with all the latest developments on the BBC website. From the 6 team, it's goodbye. The news continues here on BBC One as always. Now it's time to join our colleagues across the nations and regions for the news where you are. Bye-bye.